President earlier this week and what they're doing and who they are before I could ask you to look at this phrase from Barack Obama and think that the President of the United States literally means this.
We cannot continue to rely only on our military in order to achieve the national security objectives that we've set. We've got to have a civilian national security force that's just as powerful, just as strong, just as well funded.
I mean, I don't know how anybody's going to respond to the facts that I'm going to present tonight because, quite honestly, they haven't responded to any of the questions that we have posed on this show or that we have even sent to them at the White House. Nor has anyone challenged any of the facts that we have presented in this show over the last couple of days, other than the White House has been very clear with us. Don't call these people czars. Okay, okay, we got that one. But I can't make this piece of the puzzle fit unless this piece is about building some kind of thugocracy. All week we have been asking tough questions. Tonight, I would just love to hear the answers for these questions. And here are some. Mr. President, why do we need a civilian national security force that is just as strong, just as powerful as the military? Here's why I ask that question. Who are we fighting exactly? Who internally is threatening our security? It's clearly, I tried to piece this together. I've tried to come up with an answer. And please, America, if I'm missing it, please let me know. It's clearly not because we feel there is a threat from illegal aliens crossing the border. Nobody in the government, this administration or the last, has a problem with what's going on in the border. And anyone who would say that there has been a problem has been deemed a racist. A civilian national security force on the border is called the Minutemen. And the attitude from this administration, as well as the Bush administration, was that they were vigilantes. So it's not for the border. It can't be a national civilian national security force against Islamic extremists. I say this honestly, because according to this administration, we're not even at war against Islamic extremists anymore. Is this administration expecting us to believe that they're going to ask the American people to profile and call in tips on Muslim Americans who act suspiciously? That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So who are the enemies that we need to have a civilian national security force to protect us from? Who are the enemies? Is it possible that we're seeing the beginnings of another enemy? One that we haven't discussed? Mr. President, is your civilian national security force to protect us from things that the Missouri State Police, your own Department of Homeland Security, and then you later retracted, and the liberal Southern Law Poverty Center have come out over and over and over again and said we're a threat? You know, militia groups, Tea Party goers, people with "Don't Tread on Me" flags. Me, I've been listed. Sarah Palin, oh, she's scary. Is that who it is? Think about this. Is it unreasonable today, with what you know and what you've learned from the last 3 nights, to think that this government would ask you to spy on your neighbors in light just of these recent stories? Flag.gov, email asking for tips on fishy behavior. They're adding cookies to your computer now, and they'll track whenever you've visited a government website. By the way, that used to be illegal, but they changed it, I believe, in the middle of the night on a Friday when nobody was watching. Now, the government is using outside companies to track and contact you. Are they gathering information on you? I don't know. I don't know why they didn't trust all of the dealers in the country with cash for clunkers. They didn't trust those guys, remember? They had a warning on there that if you click on it, that computer now is considered government property, and they could do whatever they wanted with the information. Well, I have to tell you, all of this stuff, All of it sounds like a sci-fi movie. If I would have told you that this was a movie, if I pitched this as a movie script, 2 years ago, you would say nobody would believe this. Well, I don't know what else to believe. I have to ask the reasonable question in these unreasonable times. If not these crazy things, well, then who will the civilian national security force protect us from? Maybe a better question is to ask this. Mr. President, do you know of a coming event? Could you fill us in? We will help protect the nation. If you know of it, tell us.
From the campaign has always talked about vastly expanding AmeriCorps, which is made up of all sorts of these little corps doing all sorts of things. But the key thing to understand, which is why you laid it out that way, is why does the left need this? And the left has always argued for this. William James wrote an article in 1906 calling for the moral equivalent of war. This is part of transforming America. They want to transform it from a decentralized civil society into a national community. They want to use the military fervor, the cohesiveness, the strength of the military, and they want to direct it towards new activist social justice outcomes.
Okay.
That's what the progressives have talked about for a long time.
Okay, we're going to talk about some of the groups that are going to start being folded in, but David, let me go to you. Who is the enemy that we need a national security force inside? Who is the? Can you come up with anybody?
I really don't know, Glenn. I mean, you know what it comes down to, though, and I want to make this comparison. I'm not comparing my president to Saddam Hussein or to Hitler or anything else. I want your audience to understand something from a military point of view. When Saddam Hussein lost confidence in his army in '91, when they capitulated, when they quit, when they stopped following his orders, he created and he re-supported what was called a Fedayeen, a group of loyalists who weren't loyal to the country or the flag. They were loyal to the office of president and to the man who held that office. And what we're seeing now is a complete disconnect to the warrior class in America, to the military, and to the left. They never had a common denominator. They never had a way to understand us. So you know what? We don't need you. If we have to enforce, let's say, I don't know, polling laws, we want to keep polling intimidation down in 2012, we'll send in our civilian corps. If we want to make sure the census is run correctly and the right people are counted, we'll bring in our civilian corps. If we want to, I don't know, take away the arms of radical militias in South Texas, bring these guys in. This is scary stuff.
But I mean, I'm finding this is the hardest part to connect to, because this is, I mean, look, David, what you just said is, you said, I'm not comparing, but you are. I mean, this is what Hitler did with the SS. He had his own people. He had the brown shirts and then the SS. This is what Saddam Hussein. So, but you are comparing that. And I mean, I think America would have a really hard time getting their arms around that.
But Glenn, all right, when I was in Iraq, I was surrounded by true mobs, okay? I'm talking about people, hundreds of people that were around us, that were upset, that were throwing rocks. But you know what, Glenn? In that group, you had to identify 3 individuals who were the instigators, who were the agitators. And you took those guys out because you had a window of opportunity. And once that window closed, Glenn, it was critical mass. It was a powder keg. If you allowed those people to instigate people, the rocks became grenades, the sticks became rifles. And what I'm saying right now is that we are at a point that if we allow this crowd of people wouldn't have rose to arms without the people that were stirring the pot, that were moving the embers of violence. And we're at a point right now where on both sides of the aisle, the radicals in this country need a push. And we are back into a situation that is going to be out of control. And this is not a joke. This isn't fun time.
I know. Matthew, this is what I've been warning for a very long time. Matthew, do you believe that when he says, I need a national security force as well funded and as well trained as the military, that's what he really truly means? That they're not sending out, $500 billion worth of paintbrushes to paint people's houses?
I think we better be careful here. There's a military aspect of this, but it's not military in the sense that I think we're talking about here. This is part of the government wanting to actively transform society and create a civilian corps with military aspects and how they're going to be dressed and how